He hid being a lawyer all season long, but there is no hiding the fact that he deserved to be the winner of Survivor Season 48. So joining me now is the 48 champ, Mr. Kyle himself. Kyle, how are you?
Doing good. Thank you so much, Blake. I'm just so happy. Like I can't even express it. It still doesn't feel real.
Okay, well, I just have to ask, hey, now that you won, what's it feel like to be a millionaire?
Oh, it feels great. Are you kidding me? Like when I saw that direct deposit hit, I was very, very grateful. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, hey,
And
and
my
you
wife was too.
I was gonna say you've got a wife to make happy now too, so there's that to factor in. So, all right, my first big question for you here: what was it like for you balancing throughout the game? You know, your secret duo, and then kind of being a part of this major alliance throughout the season.
Yeah, it was as you saw, it was very, very difficult. Survivor is a game about narratives. You have to manage them. It's a really tough line to thread, tough needle thread rather. And like, not only was I in the majority and I had the secret thing with Camilla, but I also had good relationships with the people in the minority alliances. Me and Mitch were very close. So like, the funny thing is this, in the real world, my friends have kind of all made fun of me for not being that emotionally available. But in the game, I think I've really learned that, I can be an emotional guy. And so balancing things strategically and emotionally, especially when you're in the middle, was pretty difficult.
A decision that I was a little bit confused about just as a viewer was at Final Six, you and Kamilla had talked about kind of weakening Joe, right? And kind of like taking out some big targets. So you chose Shaheen and successfully executed that. But I'm curious, like, can you expand a little bit more on like why Shaheen over, let's say, Eva, who was like Joe's right-hand woman all season long?
Okay, so I think there's like 3 points to this. The first is this. I thought about my game in a way in which like I come into the merge, right? I was in the middle of my pre-merge alliance, smack dab in the middle of my tribe. Went to a tribe swap, played an idol, somehow got away with that and implanted myself in a majority alliance and still kept my relationship secret with Camilla. So I'm like, I'm playing a good games. At the same time, people are continuing to tell me time and time again as they're leaving the game that Joe has the biggest chance of winning and like you're giving the game to Joe. So affirmatively, I was like, I need to do something to show the jury that like I've been playing a great game that I'm proud of. Joe's played a great game, Eva's played a great game, but like don't discount me too. Um, on top of that, and here's point two, I had a very close relationship with Joe and Eva. They showed them being very close. They showed me and Camilla being very close, but there's only 90 minutes an episode. They don't show the conversations that I really had with them. I look at them like family. And who knows what happens if I put one of them on the jury? I've already burned Cedric. He trusted me. He went home. Chrissy, David was my number one very early on in the game. We were very, very close. And Star and Mary kind of were ambivalent to me. So at this point, you have to be intentional about who you put on the jury. And that's a lot of what the Shaheen vote was about. So yeah, I had to be intentional, but I also knew I had to give the jury something concrete that they would be willing to vote for me. And I had to put somebody in the jury who actually would vote for me because betraying somebody would be very difficult. Who knows how that shakes out?
Yeah, no, I think that's a strong point. One of the like more emotional moments, I guess, of the season finale was when Eva's having an episode when practicing for the fire making challenge, and you can really tell how much it weighs on you and Joe. But for me, like the editing anyway, really showed how much it weighed on you. And so, can you like walk me through those emotions a little bit of kind of experiencing that firsthand?
Yeah, Eva is like a sister to me. And we had this incredible relationship, and we still do. And so when I told her that she was going into fire, I knew that she was more than capable of doing it. But I don't think I quite realized in that moment how much pain it was going to put her through. And the worst part about that for me was the moment that I gave it to her, I knew that I couldn't get it back because nothing about Eva was ever going to let me do her dirty work or Joe do her dirty work. Eva is one of the strongest people that I know. She's an incredibly strong player. I was scared to give her this other notch on her resume. It was also obviously very difficult for me because Camilla and I were super close. Um, but you see it, Joe asking her, let me go on fire. I had a conversation with her and she was like, absolutely not. This is mine. So despite all of the pain that she went through, and there was a fraction of what she deals with. She still was going to do it herself. And proud is the wrong word because it sounds condescending. I'm just like so grateful that she's my friend and I learn from her every day. And I hope she would say the same about me.
Yeah, no, I think we've learned a lot about kind of friendship and authenticity on this season. And speaking to some of the other your fellow contestants today. I feel like that was kind of just a resounding theme throughout the season. So that was really nice to see. Now, something that also stood out to me was it seemed a little bit like the jury was kind of shocked that you were taking Joe to the final three. And obviously it didn't matter in the end because you won anyway. But what are kind of your thoughts on that? Do you think maybe the jury was expecting you to maybe take Kamilla or Joe over or Kamilla or Eva over Joe? Or like what was your kind of take on that? Because I don't know, they seemed taken back that you picked Joe.
Yeah, so I mean, Joe and I had a conversation. I told Joe, listen, at the loved ones where I told him I would take him to the end. Joe and I also, I'm sure people are tired of hearing it, but Joe and I were very close out there and still are. And emotionally, it felt right, but strategically too, like I'm not going to give Joe a chance to put another thing on his resume, especially when people are telling me that like it's his game. Now, when like the jury's face when I took Joe to the end, they were shocked, but I knew what I was doing. And I think that's like the biggest learning point for me. In the real life, you hear me talk about like, I'm the best average guy you'll ever meet and all these things. In the real world, I downplay my accomplishments all the time. Sometimes, even though I can be overconfident, I like give up on myself or I refuse to like acknowledge some of the things that I've been through or like be proud of myself. But like that to me was I'm proud of the game that I played. You might not know it yet, but I know I can believe in myself and I know I can explain it to you guys. So yeah, am I going to take the biggest threat to the end? Absolutely. But guess what? I took myself to the end too and I won. So I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, and as you should, because as I said, it worked out, so it doesn't really matter what they think now anyway. So,
Yeah.
part of really the strength of your game was this amazing duo and alliance that you had throughout the entire season with Kamilla. So, I'm curious, how were you guys able to kind of keep it secret for so long? And do you think that anyone actually caught on or no? Because I will say, from the viewer perspective, I felt like it was becoming a little bit more obvious, but then seemingly everyone was still pretty shocked at Final Tribal Council.
Yeah, it's tough. So I think like you have to give credit where credit is due. David sort of snuffed us out to a large extent. That's what a large part of that vote was. David and I were super, super close. He was my number one very much early on in the game and even into the early merge. But we started to butt heads about our vision for what the game looked like. And it's funny. I think that made Kamilla and I get closer. But like to answer your question, I mean, you saw pretty much almost all of the conversations that me and Kamilla had together. Like people think that like, oh, Kyle's just going in his confessionals, or I don't know what people think. I haven't looked, but like people, like I'm surely I heard myself say I have like secret alliances and this and that, and people are probably like, how? But like you don't see it. After I play my idol, we come back to the beach and like we continue the ruse. And I'm like, listen, somebody went through my bag. I don't know who it was. Of course, I knew who did it, but I told Joe and like I ran up to Kamilla and I told her I'm going to play an idol tonight. You can vote with me or against me. In reality, of course, we were working together, but like we set it up to make it look that like we didn't trick anybody. And next thing you know, like we talked for 30 seconds to a minute throughout the merge, like every day. Maybe we get that. We went a day without talking, but we were efficient when we were together and we tried our best to keep it secret. So like credit to David, and that's where we started to really butt heads. But at the same time, Kamilla and I worked very, very hard to keep that under wraps.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I thought was really strong on your part was your presentation at Final Tribal Council. So much so that as we were going through that part of the episode, I was like, if Kyle does not win, I'd be really shocked. And so I'm curious, what was kind of your plan of attack for Final Tribal? Because obviously for a lot of people, it's kind of make or break on winning the million.
Yeah, I went through every single person on that jury in my head and I thought about who I'd burned, what I needed to own, what maybe I hopefully could sweep under the rug. Um, and I was scared of Joe and Eva, but I knew that there was a chance that maybe they would split votes. And like they played a very similar game in the same way that Kamilla and I played a similar game. That's why Kamilla and I couldn't sit next to one another. But like here's the deal. Like, was I confident going in about my speaking skills and what I could present? And did I have my ducks in a row to like explain to the jury? Absolutely. But like you saw episode 5, you saw Eva like talk about a very tough situation, like in a snippet. And like it was one of the most eloquent things I've ever heard. You've seen Joe. Joe is an incredibly likable person. He's an incredible speaker. He was winning these challenges, and I knew that I had to differentiate my game because I was sitting next to two very strong players.
Was there a jury vote that you were shocked to receive, or maybe one that you didn't receive that you maybe thought you would get? Because you got 5 votes overall out of the 8 jury members.
I was Shaheen and David were two big toss-ups for me. For different reasons. David and I, like I mentioned, were extremely close. And like he was my number one. I think he would say the same thing. I said it about him. That obviously that changed to Kamilla at a certain point. But like, if there was anybody who I think he had license to be upset with, I think in a lot of ways, he would probably point that at me. Um, so I had to explain to him why I did what I did, what happened leading up to it. Um, Shaheen, right? Like I just voted him out. We were working together. We were in a strong alliance together. Shaheen and I were incredibly close out there too. But I also knew that he was somebody who would respect strategy and gameplay. And it's a gamble. It's a gamble to send somebody home and to wonder if they're going to vote for you. But I think it paid off.
Um, Something that you mentioned, kind of not over and over again, but a few different times throughout the season was your kind of teen troubles, if you will, and some of the trouble that you got into with that. And then now kind of turning your life around, being a lawyer and kind of returning the favor in a sense, going back and helping some of those kids that were in your same position. So, why don't you expand upon your journey a little bit more with that? And I was curious to know if maybe being on Survivor helped you kind of forgive yourself for maybe that part of your life, because I can tell there's a lot of hurt associated with it.
Yeah, it's tough to talk about things in like a short snippet of time. I've only had nonviolent misdemeanors when I was a kid. A lot of those, if not all of my records, are expunged. Um, but like, there's also more that plays to it. I have been treated differently than other people who might be in a similar situation than me, and that is difficult to accept as well. Like, why do I get treated differently? Um, I'm in such a different place in my life now, which is why it's so cool to be able to talk about it on the island. Because, like, in the most beautiful place on the world, at some point I was thinking about when I was in a box. Um, Joe and I had conversations about his dad being incarcerated, and what that looked like. Um, People in my real life don't know these things about me. I'm a successful attorney, in New York. I work for a great firm, and people have been incredibly supportive of me. There's only my close family members and friends, but I've been taking steps to sort of remediate things in a way that I'm proud of. When I graduated college, I taught at a boarding school, but during the summers, I went and I taught at a juvenile detention center. When I went to law school, I worked at the juvenile justice clinic where I represented children who were, facing criminal allegations. And, that's where I won a jury trial, getting somebody who was wrongly accused of like felony larceny from the person off on all charges. Um, and now I'm an attorney working towards like the next step of my career. And by the way, like I have a great support system and family now around me. So um, it's hard to talk about those things, but I'm also proud of myself for bringing it up, having those conversations because people look at me in my everyday life for whatever reason and don't assume that I've had those contacts with the criminal justice system, but I have. And I'm proud of the way I've carried myself since.
Yeah. One thing that was really kind of special, I think that was really highlighted after the tribe swap was when you, Kamilla, Shaheen, and Joe all talked about your parents and how, in some form of passion, they've immigrated or been refugees or just overcome a lot of hardship, right? And so I was curious to know what was that like for you getting to bond with people that maybe shared similar experiences? Because I know, like, for me, there were certain things I experienced growing up and I felt like no one around me understood. And once I finally met other people that really could relate to that, it is kind of a game changer, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, it was really cool. It was if you look at what that tribe looked like, even when Thomas was there, it was a really cool group of people. And like I really enjoyed my time on Siva. But we dug into conversations on Nuvula in ways that like I had not engaged with in the game. And I think Kamilla would tell you that as much too. Like I saw Kamilla open up in a way that I hadn't seen her do in the earlier days of the game. Um, what I loved about it is that it was organic and it was a very nuanced conversation about like what the people who have given everything to us have sort of been through. And to listen to Shaheen talk about his dad and his mom, and to listen to Kamilla talk about her parents and her dad escaping genocide, to listen to Joe talk about what his dad went through in incarceration, especially in my position, it meant the world to me. Like that's why I went out there for conversations like that.
Yeah, well, and it was a bond that obviously stuck because you all made it very far in the game. So I do think those like very personal conversations do help game wise. Something that I now know to be true, but you talked about a lot throughout the season was being engaged and about to get married. And in my research, looks like you got married last fall. So how excited was your wife for you, and what's married life been like since the show?
Oh, it's been awesome. Tons of life changes. I came back, we got married a month and a half afterwards. Obviously, Survivor's coming. We had to move back to New York because I was starting a new job. Um, but it's like fun. And it's such a cool thing to be able to start this like new stage of life with like the person I love, Maggie. And have $1 million to start it off with, like, is pretty awesome. So, and she's my biggest supporter. It's her family that got me into the show. Her mom, shout out Susan, who's the one who got me into it. So, I'm just so thankful, and I can't wait to see where things go, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, shout out Susan. Also, I mean, $1 million is like the best wedding gift ever. There's no complaints there.
Yeah.
So, my final question for you, Kyle. You played such a strong game full of strategy and a good social game. You even won a couple immunity challenges. But would you return to Survivor again if the opportunity ever presented itself?
100%. Are you kidding me? Like, if Jeff calls me, I'm picking up. I'm like, get me on the plane to Fiji. Like, let me play again. That was not my feeling when I immediately got home. But like a week later, I was like, I want to play this game again. And I think I'd play it every opportunity I ever got. So I'm just thankful to be able to play, to be able to win. Not that many people get to say that, but of course I would.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, they say time heals all wounds. And so I think you've had some times. Maybe now's a good time to go back out. So we'll see how that works out. But Kyle, once again, congrats on being the Survivor Season 48 winner. You played an incredible game, and it was so much fun getting to watch you play all season.
Thank you so much, Blake. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, honestly.